Super Session speakers, Michael Allen and Christopher Allen.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming by. I'm Michael.
And I'm Christopher.
This is my son, and I'm proud of him. And he's now president of our company, and I'm relieved. Oh, gosh. Well, we're really happy to have a chance to speak with you. If this session were subtitled, it would be Duh. It's just recently, I feel like I've realized some things that I've been missing in over 55 years of working in e-learning, which was a long time. And when it hit me and we started doing some experiments with it and seeing how amazing the effect of this little change is, I thought we have to share this with everybody as fast as we can. And so this is kind of our first releasing of this. I'm working on a book that should be out later in the year. If I can keep focused on it, we'll be done. So we'd like to do some different things, of course. One of them would be nice if my slide would advance, and it didn't.
There you go.
There. So there's the two of us. But first, I'd like to dedicate this. I'm sure many of you know Ray Jimenez. I was working with Ray on a project that he had incorporating ChatGPT into some really interesting interactive frameworks for group learning as well as individual learning, and he was very, very excited about it. We were talking about partnering and doing some joint projects together and so forth. And then just like 2 days after our last conversation, I got a call that he'd passed away suddenly. Just could not believe it. So Ray has contributed so much to our field, and it'll have a lasting effect. So I hope I'll remember him. All right. Oh, and this is his book too, which he had just finished. So that was good. We were going through some revisions of it, and he was very excited about it. His style is fun to read, and lots of examples. You can order it on the Vignettes Learning website, $45, I think, and it's well worth it. So I hope you have a chance to see it. Okay, is this going to work or not? It seems to be not. Okay. So one of the things we're thinking about is there are so many newcomers to the field of e-learning every year, and it's been long enough that some of us have had the good sense to retire, and others can't seem to figure out how to do that. But we would like to get a sense of who our group is today. So
Yeah. Let's have, if you don't mind, if everybody would stand up real quick, get you out of your seats. Okay. If you've been in an L&D career for 4 years or less, have a seat. Okay. And 10 years or less, have a seat. Wow. All right. 15 years or less, have a seat. 25 years or less, have a seat. All right. Congratulations. Thanks for coming by.
So there's a lot of experience in the room.
A lot of experience in the room.
A lot of experience, yes.
So we started to think about, what sort of changes has the industry seen over the decades that e-learning has been in play. And if you have a piece of paper, you can do this mentally, on the graph, kind of chart where your career began. And then what I'd like you to do is to think about the value of typical e-learning that you've seen over your career, or that your group has produced. And let's use classroom instruction as kind of our median. and think about, from wherever that
Yes, I'd clarify that. You didn't mean e-learning as the horizontal line. You meant classroom instruction.
Classroom instruction is our horizontal line, kind of the value of which e-learning should be equal to or better than. And of the courses that you've produced or that you've taken over your career during that timeline, so wherever the time starts, so maybe that timeline's 1990, going forward, how do you think e-learning has progressed with the technology that we've had, with the new authoring tools, the new media delivery types, the new devices that people use every day? Is e-learning becoming more valuable in every iteration, or do you see it falling down? And so you might draw graphs kind of like this, where effective and fun is at the top end of the chart, and at the bottom would be ineffective and boring. And so you might draw something that kind of looks like this over your career. You've seen new innovations come into the field, and you've seen a boost to the value that e-learning has had. Or maybe it's something like this, or maybe something like this. Let's kind of take a moment to think about how you've seen the value of typical e-learning change over your career. And now I've got some questions for you. So you've been doing this kind of a long time, and you've seen a number of innovations and new technologies come into the field. And so I'll plot a few of these, and maybe at least for the first few of them, you might explain what they are.
Sure.
So starting in the lower left-hand corner, teletype.
Well, I started in about 1968, and the only thing that we had to use at first were teletype machines, and I'm guessing that a lot of you have never seen a teletype machine, let alone worked with one, but that they printed on paper, they stood on the floor, they had a keyboard on the front, and they rattled and made just incredible noise as I, typing one line of text, and then, it was very slow, it was very noisy, and yet we were addressing the question, could we use technology to deliver learning in a more effective way than typically happened in a classroom? Kind of crazy, I think, that anybody would ask that question, and certainly nobody thought teletype delivery was going to be it. But we could see that things were going to get better, and so we started thinking really hard about what would technology be able to enhance, and what would we lose by using technology. And this was done at Ohio State University. We had wonderful resources to work with, and just a year later, IBM opened their World Demonstration Center of Advanced Technologies that we had a chance to work with, which was really exciting, including an instructional product development language. It was kind of a programming language called CourseWriter, which was a very interesting language. What we found out, of course, pretty quickly is that the faculty members at the university had no interest in learning a programming language unless they happened to be in one of the engineering fields. So we needed to do that work for them, but still, it was very interesting. And the equipment started getting better. We had CRTs now that could display the text a little bit later, made by Hazelden Corporation, and they were all capital green letters, no graphics at all. And yet it allowed us to think really hard about the learning process and what happens. How do you stimulate learning? How do you evaluate learners' progress? And how do you shape instructional messages and so forth? So in a way, having a primitive environment to work in, I think, sort of nurtured deep thinking about instructional design. Certainly interested me. And then I had a chance to go work with the Plato system at the University of Illinois, joint with Control Data Corporation. And this was a system that was way, way advanced. I mean, this was in the 60s and that it was being developed. I didn't get there until a little bit later. But we had screen sharing, we had text messaging. I played bridge at that time. I had a partner who lived in South Africa, and we played against a team in Brussels. This was back so much farther than most people realize that these things were going on, and it was a fabulous system for experimenting with instructional programs. There are some really great games developed. How the West was 1, 2, 3 was one of the most remarkable, and still is one of the most remarkable instructional paradigms for teaching certain kinds of mathematical thinking. Chemistry distillation experiments done online in Plato, amazing simulations and so forth. And then the mouse came along. And to me, the mouse was a step backward. And I think it still is, in a sense, because before the mouse came along, students and learners had to verbalize their responses. You weren't just recognizing, like from multiple choice or a list, or just a drag and drop and so forth, all of which have their place. But with the mouse now, we have reduced a lot of the information we get from a learner to a click here or a drag there and so forth. And they're not telling us very much. They're really not telling us very much. And so, in a sense, I'm not sure that mouse-driven at that time was better than classroom, if at all. Now, certainly, systems have the advantage of accessibility at any time, in any place. You could go at your own pace and so forth. All those were real pluses. We knew that came with digital delivery. But the actual learning events, it's questionable, I think. And then authorware came along, and authorware was the predominant development language for a number of years, and it allowed non-programmers to build simulations, complex branching strategies, and so forth, do things that they couldn't afford to do before because they had to hire a team of programmers and have them do what they wanted, and that's a whole complex thing in and of itself. Anyway, things progressed, some above the line in my view, some below the line. Templates are handy for going faster, not always for going better. And a lot of people who don't have the skills of instructional design, haven't had a chance to really learn those skills, find templates very helpful, and understandably, without them, they probably couldn't do anything. So that's good, except that we see a lot of stuff churned out that's not great.
Why do you think the internet pushed the quality of instruction down so far for e-learning?
So when we started, we had no sound, we had no animation, we had no video and so forth. And pretty much right across the line, we've gotten everything we wished for. Just everything we wished for, including interconnectivity, networking, low-cost laptops that were multimedia capable and so forth. Everything we wanted. Has it made instructional design easier? Not at all, I don't think. In fact, in some ways, it's made it harder because you have more things to manipulate. But there are other things that are much easier to do because you have the tools. But the internet now kind of took this away from the province of the experts, of the people who are really, really studying cognition and learning and memory and all those things, and carefully working with these systems that were so expensive to use that you couldn't waste time on them. Everything had to be justified by this is really important for an individual learner. And then the internet came along, the tools came along, and now you see advertising that, develop a course in 16 minutes and stuff. What? it seems to me, and I've been talking to a number of others in the field, that if you take the whole of what's being done in our field, it's not a lot to be proud of. But there are exceptions that are just to be so proud of, that we think that the whole field is going to move in that direction. And what we see is how many people, not represented by the group here today, and of course I don't know online, but we generally see in the field, we're flooded with people who don't have much background, but we're just given the assignment. Do you have that next slide? No, sorry.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, you could make somewhat of a graph that kind of ebbs and flows, and it goes up and down. And the question is, how do you use e-learning to provide something better than classroom instruction?
So I was reading Dr. Floor's work just recently, and in his book on This is Learning Experience Design, which I found really interesting. And he said, when you look at the level of innovation in e-learning, it's quite limited. And so he was saying things that I was kind of feeling, and he was saying it out loud, and so I am too now. A lot of e-learning is similar in its design, and it's often based on traditional instruction. And I think, I go see the dentist annually, been there a lot. I don't think that makes me a dentist. Well, a lot of us have been students. That does not make us instructional designers, and so very often we repeat what's been done to us thinking, well, I learned something, so that must be a good way to go about it. But as he says, we really seem to be in a rut. And it looks like a lot of e-learning looks like a lot of e-learning, with those notable exceptions of really powerful, really great things that are being done. And my hope, and everything I've been doing and contributing, is to get everybody up a higher level where we really are producing fantastic things. And it's not impractical. I want to point that out, that I'm not talking about things that require you to hire a Disney studio and game programmers who cost a fortune and so forth. I'm always looking for practical things. It's kind of what you do and how you do it. So I feel like we've taken some steps forward, that the keyboard was pretty fantastic input. Now I really think we should be speaking to the computers. The computer should be asking us a question. We should use natural language, and we should talk back and say what we think and what we feel and so forth. And the mouse is really great for some things, but really it doesn't tell us very much about a learner. You have to be very, very clever to construct events where it does tell you more than basically a multiple choice question. And then the phone came along. Well, portability is really wonderful, except that a little tiny screen, which ends up mostly with you scrolling things up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. And that doesn't tell you very much either. You can do better than that. I'm taking kind of extreme position on that, but so forth. So, what are the answers? Where are we going to go? Well, okay. First of all, this happens all the time. Hey, we need some training. We've got new salespeople, Who's not busy? Anybody not busy? You. Develop our training program. You know sales. And that happens in a lot of corporations. I went to AT&T a few years ago. They filled an auditorium about twice the size of this with a balcony. They asked me to speak for 3 days on instructional design. And as I was trying to work through it, we were getting close to the end, and somebody up in the balcony with the lights and stuff, I couldn't see him, just shouted, "I have a question." I said, good, please. What's your question? You probably don't know, but last Friday, everybody in this room had a business card that said software engineer. Today, everybody in this room has a business card that says instructional designer. And could you just tell us how to do it, please? We've got 2 hours left. This happens all the time in corporations, and what we do as instructional design is a profession, you know, and we need to promote this as a profession, and thankfully ATD does that, and so that's one of the reasons I'm so delighted to be here and supporting the organization and talking about these things. But if you're one of those people who just got a new business card and you're going to design something, what are you going to design? Well, you're going to base it probably on classroom instruction again. In the classroom, it's what I call tell and test. And that's how a lot of us got through school. Teachers told us things or had us read chapter here, read a chapter here, maybe do some exercises, and then on Friday there'll be a quiz, and then on Monday we're going on to the next topic, and so on. So, grades. If you did well on the quiz, you got a higher grade, and if you didn't, you got a lower grade, but the instruction rolls forward regardless of how you're doing where you are. That's one of the huge limitations of classroom, is that it has to kind of go at a continuous pace regardless of how some people are doing. We were talking with one group at a school that we're working with, and in 4th grade they have kids working at math at a 2nd grade level, barely, and in that same class they have kids proficient at 6th grade level. And what is that teacher able to do? Teachers' focus is keeping calm, primarily, because of all the disruption. Now, adults are a little easier to handle, a little, but we can be rambunctious cognitively without letting it show. So we can be totally absent when the training doesn't fit us, you know? And a good digital program is not going to let that go by, you know? We're going to deal with that. So, quickly, 68, we wanted to be better than classroom. In 74, we got our wishes media, we got low code, fast development. We got low cost assimilation with the internet. We had template test and tell to make that easier. Now we're looking at artificial intelligence. A lot of people say, well, we'll just ask the computer, make a training program. And it can do some interesting things, I got to admit. But it can also really do some bad stuff and so on. And corporations, if we're doing corporate training, corporations don't want the content based on consensus of what you can find spread around and what people are saying about how to do it well. They want their training based on their best practices. And they want it distinctive and contrasted with the general wisdom and the general knowledge out there. And so AI can help in some cases, but it's a real stone wall for some others, at least now. So I think it's appropriate to go back to the question of, are we doing better than classroom training in our e-learning? Or is it only better because it's accessible 24/7 wherever you are, and you can go at your own pace, which is a big plus. But I want the learning to be deeper, and I want people to be able to learn faster if they're interested, they're capable, and they're focused. I want them to be able to take their time and get all the support that they need in order to learn at the speed that works for them. So the question, why e-learning? Certainly justified by low-cost delivery, and that's good. Reduced learning time. Study after study shows that e-learning generally can accomplish the same amount of training in about 40% of the time that's generally done in classroom and other ways. So that's good. And we could go deeper into why that is, but consistency is really nice, and that's one of the downfalls, of course, of classroom, which is that you have uncontrollable variation among teachers or instructors in a classroom. So we have one instructor of a class, and in this case, her knowledge is represented by the squiggle line. There's a couple of things that she just never really understood herself, and so she tries to just gloss by that a little bit. And she has her favorite topics, which she delivers just beautifully. This is not atypical, this happens all the time. And the outcome of that is that you have a distribution of learning from very, very little to people who do very, very well, and people in the middle, so the most common level of learning there in this is somewhere in the middle. And the side to the left down to zero is not a good thing, right? And even to the right of the middle isn't generally good enough. I don't want to fly with a pilot that's down in there in the middle somewhere, all the way, want them all the way over there. So then we have all of the different instructors who have their different areas of interest and what they like to teach and what they get bored with and what they don't really understand. And so with Classroom, we have uncontrolled variation. So consistency, it's a good thing. We'd like them all to be like number 3 there, where everybody masters almost 100% of the material. That would be a lot better. And it's data-driven. And this is one of the things that is underutilized, in my view, that we have data. When we had authorware back in the day, and that was being developed, the chief engineer asked us, his team, what data do you want recorded as students are going through the e-learning? And we had wonderful conversations about that. Our answer wasn't anything like SCORM. SCORM is one of those things that pushed us back. SCORM was a bad thing. But because it ignores a lot of the really, really important data. Really important data. It just takes these little indicators that are faulty indicators to begin with, and not very many of them. But after we debated and listed all the things, Steve Berth, that engineer, said, tell you what, why don't we record everything? We'll record everything. And then you can ask your questions and do data analysis for those questions as you think of them. And you don't have to eliminate the possibility of answering some questions because you didn't record the data. So we recorded, into the microseconds how long it takes a person to respond, what their response was, and their accuracy, how long their sessions lasted, and everything you could know about every learning experience, and you could go back and analyze it, which allows you 2 big opportunities. One of them is that you can do it dynamically in real time, and the other one is that you can make systematic improvement. So you can't really, it's overstated, but you can't really make systematic improvement to classroom delivered instruction. You can a little, not very much, but I don't know. In high school, my English teacher was Miss America. I had been quite a few years ago before. And literally, it's not a joke, you could tell how the class was going to go by her hair. If she had a bad hair day, it was just going to be disaster, and she was going to pick on Duffy, the kid, that she just, for some reason, picked on all the time. But if her hair was beautiful and nice, it was going to be a great class. It was going to be fun. Everybody was going to be happy. She was going to do a really good job of teaching. I don't know how you systematically improve that, except maybe send her to a hairdresser every day. But instructors are different. But individualization is the reason that I have been excited about e-learning for such a long time. And I really kind of thought that was it. And then I'll talk to you about why it's not. All of it. Data. So the data can inform the instruction logic so it can respond in real time And it can know so much more about every individual student than any classroom teacher ever could. And everything it does can be based on those data, if you design it that way. Now if you do tell and test, not going to even bother with the data because you're going to have a post-test. If you're a fan of post-tests, come and see me, and I'll give you a therapy session, because post-tests are just poisonous. They're bad things. I know that sounds pretty, but anyway, they are. Instructional logic then can feed the data, the logic can be improved, it can be changed, and eventually, even if you started with something that's pretty crappy, it can evolve into something pretty wonderful. And it can do it in a pretty straight line because of the data. One of the things I'm going to mention a little bit is a framework that I started working on, I don't know, I suppose it's been 10 years yet.
15.
Oh, it's been more, 15 years. I was actually at an ATD conference, ASTD.
Yep.
4 letters then. And one of the people that had attended the session came up afterward and said, I really would like you to look at our work. It was actually done, because he's no longer there and so forth, so it was done for Mercedes. He said, I think we've done exactly what you're talking about, and I'd just like you to see it. Would you mind giving us a review? And I said, I love that question, because I love looking at designs and hearing how people justify them and how creative or lack they were and so forth, and just really enjoy that. Feel really honored when somebody asks me to look at it. And I always try to be very truthful. I've never designed something myself that I thought was perfect, so there's always room for improvement. And but some are a lot better than others. So anyway, I sat down and looked at it, and as he was talking, and I was seeing the screen, and we were going through it, I thought, I don't see any relationship to the concepts that I was trying to present, thought were important, and what he had done. I just didn't see the connection, and I was trying really, really, really hard to see that. And afterward, I was talking with, a couple of thought leaders in the field, Will Thalheimer and Julie Dirksen and Clark Quinn and some others, and I was talking to them about this, and I said, we don't have a language to talk about instructional design. Most professions have their own jargon, and they have a lot of stuff. I mean, we've had ADDIE for a while, and it's run its course. We can do a lot better than ADDIE now, but we just don't know how to talk about this, and how would you compare one to another? Because what parameters would you be using? And so that really started bothering me, that we don't know how to talk about instructional designs, how to talk about paradigms very well. And so I started looking at e-learning program after e-learning program after e-learning program, looking at the components that are in there and what would I want to know about each component that seemed to be important in there. And that yielded a big surprise to me that almost every interactive program, whether it's good or bad, can be looked at as having 4 components or needing to have 4 components, and that's the context, the challenge, the activity, and the feedback. So we refer to this as CCAF. Have any of you heard of CCAF before today? Yes? Yes? A few. Well, it's time. I'd really like you to take a look at it and see if it's useful to you. I have this notion of our studios that do the development and work, and they sometimes roll their eyes. I say, we are going to hold back nothing about how we do what we do. If it's good and it's useful to other people, it improves the industry, and so we're going to share everything. We're just going to be an open book, and we'll tell everybody how we do everything. And probably the feedback we get is going to give us more value than maybe what we've shared. So we're going to be open about this. And so I started talking about CCAF a while ago, and have been doing some talks and so on. But I also had to convince our own studios that this is an architecture. Well, it didn't take much convincing, actually, because once they started to see it, it speeds up instructional design immeasurably. It's just night and day difference. We also have a process that goes with it, you know, and in terms of speed and quality, I think it runs rings around any adaptation of ADDIE that I've seen, that I know. So I want everybody to know that it's out there. Of course, I always say, if you have a process and a framework that delivers the quality that you want on time and within budget, you ought to cling to it forever, you know, just stick to it. But if you're looking for improvements in any of those areas, want to do something different, this model is one I think that's worthy of consideration. I'm not saying it because I came up with it. I'm saying it because we have used it so much, we have tested it so much, and we have many, many clients who would not allow their work to be done any other way once they've experienced it as well. So I'm going to talk about it just a little bit more a little bit later, but that's the instructional logic we use. We think it's really important for people to start out learning in a context, not like saying, we're going to learn 15 principles of sales today. Huh? You know, I mean, you need to say, you're in a situation where you have someone pushing back saying your product is too expensive or the quality isn't there or whatever it is. How are you going to handle it? What are you going to do? Get somebody facing a challenge in a context right away. And if they can handle that challenge, you know a lot about them already, and so you don't want to try to teach them things they already know and that they're already skilled at. You'll just bore them to death, and they won't think your training's any good, because it's just wasting their time. But if they can't do it, they'll now know what you might have tried to convey through instructional objectives. But students don't read instructional objectives. You know, they think, I have to go through this training program anyway, so this is just telling me what's in it. That's good, but if I have to go through it, I have to go through it, so I'm not going to read that. On the other hand, if you put them in a context and a challenge, and they find out, oh, this is what I'm going to learn, that's going to help me, or no, I've already got that, and the program says, let's go on to a more advanced topic and see if you've also got those skills, you stop wasting their time trying to teach them things that they already know and so forth. So it just works super well. So, what this allows us to do is to individualize the experience. So I'm talking about, you can change the level of challenge, you can change the context, you can change how much help you give them, how many crutches they have to work without looking anything up, and so forth. You can easily make those adjustments to having built this one time through and make it adaptable to the people who are really true novices, to the people who are really true experts already, and it will work for everybody. It seems like that's good. So, individualized. Systematic improvement, individualized, as I'm talking about. And when I started, individualization meant different feedback for different responses. So again, we were kind of typing on a keyboard and stuff. And if you said one thing, we had one response. If you said another thing, had another response, and so forth. And we thought, that's just amazing. That's just amazing. That's really wonderful. That individualizes instruction so much. And it is good. There's no question about it. We also thought, sometimes, there we go. You may need to back me up one. Back me up. There, yes. We also thought self-paced pacing was really good. Some people like to take it kind of slow and really think through. Other people like to rush through. Some people have what's really a good habit of kind of rushing through the first time, then say, now I'm going to take the e-learning over again, and I'm going to try to get everything exactly right. And then I'm going to take the e-learning again, and I'm going to see what the consequences are when I mess up everything, you know? And those are just fantastic learning experiences. So self-pacing is really a good thing, you know? And we get that through e-learning where you don't get that through classroom. And then practice to mastery, because not everybody reaches mastery at the same amount of practice. Some people get it really, really fast, and some people take a long time. It took me a long time to learn arpeggios on the keyboard. It just, you know, and I had classmates that, you know, 2 days in, going up and down, and this, what's so hard about this? You know, so almost everything needs to be practiced in order to get it into long-term memory, so it's going to stick. Training always needs to be the 3 M's: meaningful, memorable, motivational. And if it's not memorable, why go through the training anyway? Because if you can't remember it, it isn't going to help you. It isn't going to do anything for you. So all of these components are really important. And then I kind of woke up and realized that motivation is so important. And usually, especially in a classroom, but usually, we think learners are responsible for their motivation. So whatever motivation they have when they come in, that's what I'm going to have to deal with. And some people are going to be really gung-ho and they want to be here, and they're going to get everything out of the class, and some others are going to have less of that. And then to start thinking, wait a minute, we can't learn people. You know, you can try, but you can't learn people. They have to do the learning themselves. They have to put the effort in. You can't put the effort in for them. Then there were some studies done at Ohio State University where it found out that motivation trumps everything. We had classes that were, I mean, we couldn't do this today, I think it'd be illegal, but we had classes where students in introductory psychology read the final exam for the course. One limitation is that we had 68,000 students, so we had a lot of psychology classes. We allowed them to read the questions on the final exam to the class, but not pass it out. Then we had intermediate instructional paradigms, treatments, and all the way to one in which we said, the exam will be on, final exam will be on this date. We're having no classes. Here is the syllabus that's relevant to the final exam. You can find the resources in the library. Go to it. And you know, well, one thing, I mentioned post-tests. One thing, there were no significant differences on the post-tests across any of those teaching methods. From the one where they really had the students reciting the answers on the final exam in a class to those students who had no idea what the questions were going to be and were given no guidance other than a syllabus of related material. And we found out 2 things about that. One is that post-tests are very insensitive to learning unless they're delayed, and then they're sensitive to retention, which is very interesting. And so if you give a post-test at least 2 weeks after the conclusion of the course, no earlier than that, and 2 months would probably be even better. But if it's delayed, now you can find out how effective what you did is kind of sunk into long-term memory, and people still have it. But if people know that the exam is coming right at the end, they use academic study skills, which means I cram for the test, and then I give myself permission to forget it all the next day. And you know, we're really good at forgetting stuff when you study that way. You know, you can just lose it so fast. So motivation starts to dictate everything And these studies started to tell us that you can help people be more motivated if you attend to it. And if you have highly motivated people, as the Ohio study said, if you have highly motivated people, it doesn't matter how poor your instruction is, students will learn it anyway. They will find a way because their motivation will drive them to get there. On the other hand, if they have no motivation, it doesn't matter how great your animations, how concise and beautiful your screens are and your text and so forth, they're not going to get it. So motivation is the trump card, and we can't ignore it. You have to do something about it if you care about outcomes. Okay.
Is there any value in doing a knowledge check or a quiz at the end in a typical e-learning course?
Well, the answer has to be there is some. There is some, for sure. But the biggest value is to the teacher, for the teacher to find out, do I need to spend more time on some of these topics, or can we go on now? You know, what is the profile of how my students are doing, and where should I go? But it also gives students some idea of things that they really need to hone in on. And there are techniques you can use in a classroom to individualize homework and so on. So you can do some kind of fun things with that work. Mm-hmm. So all learning, except for extreme single incident traumatic learning, all learning requires intent and engagement. And if the intent is just to suffer through the class, that's what most students will do, and they're not going to get. So the intent needs to be focused, obviously, and there are so many interesting things we can do using, gaming structures and so on, but not, in my view, having the CEO make a little recording to say, we're so glad you're taking this course and you're part of our organization. This course is going to be invaluable to you and to all of us and so forth. Those things are always just looked at as manipulation and stuff. It's so much better to achieve motivation out of context and challenge, because people are pretty naturally wanting to demonstrate their skills and their abilities, and if you give people a chance to do that, they'll want to achieve more and they'll do more. So the feedback and the structure of that and the CCF is really good. So I have a pin. It's on here somewhere. There's a pin. No boring e-learning. We are an e-learning company primarily, but I'm going to shoot people, on the spot if we produce things that the feedback comes back as this was boring, because boring poisons motivation. So if you're bored, your motivation is to think about, do I have to get groceries on the way home? Is this a softball night? What else am I going to do? Oh, gee, I forgot to write an email about this and so forth. And you're completely somewhere else. So boring is antithetical to successful training education. And there's two kinds of engagements. There's sensory engagement and cognitive engagement. A lot of people think, yeah, I agree with that, boring. That's bad stuff. And so they go to sensory engagement by spinning the logos around and having pretty fun animations and things on the screen. That's not the engagement that's going to give you learning motivation. It's the cognitive stimulation that's just really important. All of these topics are really kind of have a lot of meat in them, so it could go a long way. But anyway, simulation-based and game-based things. Game-based designers know how to keep people focused. They know how to keep them trying harder and harder and harder to get to the next level, or to win a point, or to get a bell to ring. It's amazing how motivating getting a bell to ring can be if it's done in the right way. They have great theories, they have great structures. I urge you all to, if you're not already, read some of the excellent literature on game design, because it's really informative to us as instructional designers. One of the most important things, though, I think, realized as part of the CCAF study is that the most powerful feedback is a consequence of what you just did. Instead of telling people that that was the right answer, I wanted to tell you what happened. You know, you made the sale, the lab blew up, we made more money, all your employees quit, whatever might be in the context, those consequences are things that people remember for a long time. And learning is almost all about if then. If I do this, this happens. If I do this, this happens. It's those links, production rules. If this happens, if I do this, then this happens. Or if this happens in general without me, then that happens. Learning those linkages are really the core of many, many things that we teach. And so if you structure it so that instead of telling somebody, here's what happened, what are you going to do now, creates cognitive engagement, because now you start thinking, what are all the things I could do? I can't think of anything. Well, maybe I could. That's exactly what we want going on, is people thinking about that. And then if you show them something you could do that they never thought of, they, wow, that's a golden nugget, you know? And now I say, okay, then try it and see the consequences. You link those two together, and it's really fantastic. So all that, I honestly kind of thought, I understand this stuff now, you know? And so I can have somebody else do something with it. I was really, really kind of feeling like I've learned a lot. This is good. And then I realized in some work we were doing, oh no, I don't think so. I don't think so. There's something that we really missed here, and that is relevance. It's very hard to learn things that you don't think you have any use for, right? Really hard. Oh, I get a grade. Yeah, that's not really going to work too well. It works somewhat, but what about relevance? And this was struck so vividly by a young black boy where we were working in this project in North Minneapolis suburb, where very few kids are graduating high school. The academic scores are just dropping terribly. And they're wondering if all the things that we'd been learning about learning might be able to help the school district and do some things. And I didn't know if we could or not, you know? And I said, I sure don't want them thinking, here's this white guy that's going to come in and tell them all the things they're doing wrong. I would love to help if I can, but I don't know if I have the answers. This is a big problem. Government spend a lot of money on this and so forth, and yet the instruction is failing. Instruction is failing, and I think we do know quite a bit about it, good instruction. So we did focus groups at first, and we studied, and we talked to the kids, we talked to parents, we talked to the teachers and so forth. And one of the things that just bowled me over was this boy who very honestly said, why would I want to learn that? You know, that's what white people study. And as we talked with him more about it, I thought, this isn't going to make me safer getting to school and getting home at night. You know, this isn't going to teach me anything about defense or anything about my sports interests or my electronics interests or whatever they might be. And as we interviewed more kids, you know, we found some interested in gardening, some interested in cooking, a bunch of things, lots of interests to build on. We could teach math and reading and all these skills in a context that was relevant to them. And it was almost impossible to teach those same things in a context that wasn't. Now, of course, all these things are related, you know, the motivation and individualization and so forth. They see those really related, but relevance, was that the same mechanism that works for adults for in a training environment? I think so. I think we just assume that people are going to see the relevance or hope that they're going to figure it out as they go through a course. But if the relevance isn't right there, you know, you're wasting your time, you're wasting their time. And the reason I said this should be called duh is because Bandura, famous psychologist who was working way back in the 60s, discovered some really important things about self-efficacy and learning, which somehow I never came across, you know? I could be the only one in the room that hadn't, I admit that. I don't know how I missed it, but if you missed it, you know, we'll give you a little sampling of it today and see if you find it useful or interesting. So, self-efficacy is different from self-confidence, but very closely related. Self-confidence is in general, you know, I'm a confident person, I can handle most anything. Self-efficacy is specific, you know, so my artistic skills or my math skills and so forth are really great or they're terrible. And it's a specific skill area. So, and we're often teaching a skill area, of course. If a person thinks right away, I don't know why they're training me in customer service, you know. I'm really shy and I don't like talking to people and because I'm not any good at it, you know. Well, that person is going to have a low self-efficacy, which is probably lower than their actual ability. So that's why it's tilted down. And so they think this course is not for me. There's no reason for me to put effort into this because I'm never going to be good at math. I'm just not that kind of person. I'm not artistic, I'm not musical, I'm not physical, you know, and so forth, you know. So then the mind wanders, you know, and you're bored, they learn very little, and they continue to do whatever they were doing before because the course didn't sink in at almost anything but a superficial level, if at that. The opposite is very interesting in that if your self-efficacy is way higher than your competency, it's almost the same. They think, I don't need to be taking this course because I already know all this. You know, I should be teaching the course. No, why am I being forced to go through this course? It's not for me. They're going to be bored to death. They don't recognize the need to change, so they don't change, and poor performance continues. And Bandura recognized this and studied this quite a bit some time ago. And I started realizing that if a person doesn't think a course is going to do them any good, you've got some work to do because you can't just tell them. It's like telling somebody smoking is bad for you. Like that's going to change their smoking. There's no smoker that doesn't think well, maybe some, but there aren't many smokers that think smoking is a healthy thing to do, you know? And so if people don't think that it's relevant, then it isn't going to work. It isn't going to work at all. So, by the way, for the school system, we're designing a system where the kids get they all have digital devices, even though they have very low income. On their devices, they get a wake-up call in the morning, say, today, would you like to study sports? Do you want to study nutrition? Do you want to study math? No, not math.
Baking, gardening.
Gardening and all those, from the surveys of what the kids are interested in. We're going to teach them all the same skills, but we're going to do it in that context that matters to them. So in that case, we're just letting them pick, which is one way to get around this. But the nice thing about it is, come back to CCAF again, is that the contexts and challenges really address this issue of relevancy. I think he'll have to, oh, there it goes, there it goes, okay, yeah. So let me just tell you again about this a little bit. So I suggest in training programs, and I mean, if most of you don't think I'm crazy by now, I'm still working on it, you know. But I think that so many of the things that we do that we just think are sort of righteous, that this is what you do in training, need to be questioned, because I don't think training is so superbly great that it doesn't need questioning in general. So I don't believe in listing the objectives at the beginning or even any sales pitch much for a course at the beginning. Maybe, welcome, we're happy that you're here. But I immediately ask people, imagine you're in this situation. You work at Target, you're at the customer service desk, somebody comes in with a toaster to return. Never been sold here. Never been sold here. What do you do? Challenge. That gets everybody awake, thinking about that. And if you know how to handle that, then you don't need any training. And if you don't, so anyway, and the feedback are the consequences. And the consequence you want is somebody who's leaving the store with that toaster thinking they love Target ever more. This is a great store. I understand that they couldn't take it back, but I really appreciate how they handled this for me. So anyway, there we are. So Alanisms. I think we'll leave it at Alanisms. So over the years, there are a bunch of these little nugget concepts that we've come up with to guide our work. And one of our industrious employees not long ago started cataloging them, you know, and I mentioned like meaningful, memorable, motivational. If any one of those M's is missing, the other two can't make up for it. So if it isn't motivational, nothing's not going to be applied, can't remember it, or he didn't understand it, and going to help, right? So the 3 M's are really critical. We have apparently 57 or something of these have been cataloged. And we use them with our clients in our projects when we work with people together. And they start using these terms too. And if we slip up and we're not applying one of those, they'll say, hey, where is that? You know? So I thought we should give them away. We should let everybody know and see if they're useful for you too. So there's no strings attached. What we're planning on doing is sending them out one at a time to subscribers, no charge. We just love to hear back on whether they work for you or not. And you can get to them through this QR code if you want. You can also get to the slides that we used today. We have some demos of things that we have done to ask people, can we quickly show any of those? Yeah, just flip, because I think our time is up. So one of the things that we're doing with the kids is that there's this thing on the left that says how they're feeling. And it's there all the time. And if any time they want to tell us that they're bored, they're anxious, they're frustrated and so forth, they can just click over there and we will do something different. We will make a change in response, or we will just congratulate them. And let them know that their feelings are being heard. And we think this is really important. At corporate level, we're questioning, actually using questioning techniques, you know, and so we're teaching CRM. And in this case, why we ask people, like, how eager are you to learn this? We would like to know. We think it's important. And, you know, as psychologists, we know that just asking people how they feel is important to establishing a relationship, and they care. So we ask, you know, oh, I'm really good at figuring this out, and they say, okay, let's give you a higher level challenge right away. We're not going to start you with the low level stuff. We'll start you with intermediate and see how that works, you know. If you can do it, that's fantastic. We might be done with this course in 20 minutes, you know, or whatever. So there are those things. For Mary Kay Cosmetics, we trained something like 3.5 million people who are starting up their beauty consulting business. And what we did there is we had videos of people who had been very successful, and then we asked them questions about how did you feel when you started out? Did you feel confident that you knew how to do this? Did you worry about making sales and so forth? And now we have those videos all attached to those feelings, and when newcomers come along, we ask them how you're feeling. If they say, I'm really worried about the financial aspects, we say, let's play some videos for you of people who said exactly that same thing, that they were really worried at the beginning, and they've been very successful. And by matching that to people's feelings, their feelings, that empathy, we think, is going a long way, and that's why we've had so many millions of people go through that training. That's my message for today. Sorry, I went a little bit long. I really appreciate you being here, and I hope some of these things prove useful to you. Only want to help. That's all. Thank you.